Oh, here we are, week 3, the Matt Barrie Show, presented by Allstate here on the ESPN College Football YouTube channel. I am Matt Barrie, and what a discussion we have in store today. There are so many things to get to on a slate that people didn't think was going to be good. Here's where we're going on today's Matt Barrie Show, presented by Allstate. Florida, what are they going to do? What does this look like? Florida State, what the hell has happened in Tallahassee, now 0-3. Georgia survives. LSU on the road against South Carolina on the cusp of going 1-2. They get a victory. Prime gets a win. And maybe, just maybe next week, we'll see teams actually schedule people. Novel thought. And Arch Manning mania hits Texas when he comes in and accounts for 5 touchdowns. All of that and more coming on this episode of the Matt Barrie Show, presented by Allstate. It is now time to check in with Paul Finebaum, presented by Allstate. All right, so here's where we have to start, because again, anytime this happens on a Sunday, I have to preface this by one. It is 9:20 a.m. Sunday morning. Things can and will happen after we record this. It always does. There have been reports of a Board of Trustees meeting this morning at Florida. Those reports by some college football reputable reporters have been refuted. Either way, here we are to talk with Paul about the Florida situation. Paul, I'm going to tee you up with this. Billy Napier is a good dude who had a bright future as a head coach coming from Louisiana. It is clear that he is a little bit in over his head. All of this happens, Paul, when administrations freak out about a current situation and fire a coach they should have never fired. Having said that, Florida is in an absolute mess this morning.
They are. A lot of people are saying, and asking the question, Matt, can Florida afford to spend $26 million to fire Billy Napier? I respond by saying, can they afford to keep him? And my answer is no. They cannot afford to keep Billy Napier, because he has been an abject disaster. And what we saw Saturday was pretty similar to what we saw in the first game. And there is no reason to believe it's going to get much better. And the real problem for him is the calculus. He had to win that game yesterday because there are so many unwinnable games remaining. The schedule, I'll spare you the game by game, but there's a stretch that includes Tennessee in about 3 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
And then on the other side, of the backside, you have Georgia, Ole Miss, LSU, and Texas, as well as Florida State and Kentucky. So you can do whatever you want with Florida State and Kentucky and UCF in 2 weeks. But right now, there's no way they're going to do better than 500, and probably no way they're going to have a winning season. Everybody tried to tell me yesterday in Gainesville when I was saying this was a must win. Well, what about Lagway? Well, what about Lagway? He decided to go with Graham Mertz. Had he gone with Lagway and lost by the same score, I don't think his situation would be nearly as bad today. It would still be bad. But let me tell you, forget what I saw and what you saw on TV. I talked to students all weekend. Yeah, on our show Friday, they were chanting, "We want Lane."
Yeah.
That was before the game. And you know what it was like after the game.
Yeah, the schedule that you speak of yesterday, I agree. Without Connor Wegman, the starting quarterback, which, by the way, Texas saying it might be better off without him. They have at Mississippi State, who was embarrassed by Toledo yesterday. That's a whole other conversation if you even want to go there. UCF afterward. I'm sorry. Yeah, Mississippi State, UCF, which, by the way, UCF is good. And the fact that you might be behind UCF as a program in Florida is a whole different conversation. And then at Tennessee. And I'm with you that the schedule doesn't play well for Billy. I want to do again, speculation. There's been so much, like, the internet's the worst place ever because there's going to be reports on social media. I will say that our Chris Lowe, very reputable SEC reporter and college football reporter, said that the boosters have come together to raise the $26 or $27 million that it would take to buy out Billy Napier should they part ways from him. So we know the conversations have started, but here's how I want to attack this, because I don't know how much longer he's going to last if he makes it through the week. He might not even make it through Sunday. You should not have fired Dan Mullen. I don't care what anybody says. I get it. I call Thursdays with him, in studio with him 16 hours a day. You don't fire a guy that in his first 3 seasons won 3 consecutive New Year's Six games, and then the 4th year, it started to go a little bit sideways. He should have fired Grantham. He should have fired the offensive line coach. And the recruiting garbage, his lowest ranked recruiting class is still better than Billy Napier's highest. The problem was getting rid of a guy who had literally 1 bad season, and that's why they're in this spot.
Well, true or not, Matt, and I know you know what you're talking about. I'm not saying you're wrong. You're clearly right in what you said. The perception was he couldn't recruit. And it wasn't that he couldn't recruit. He couldn't compete with Kirby Smart. And that's the game he got drawn into. And then he loses a game or two and it just falls apart. And, as far as Scott is concerned, I saw Scott Friday night in Gainesville, and the backstory on him is that he was at Mississippi State, and he brought Mullen over, and then what I'm about to say is I don't really know how much power these ADs have, because the money is elsewhere, and it's hard to quantify what his role exactly was, whether he was told to fire Mullen, whether he wasn't. I don't know, and I still don't know, and I don't know what in response to what you're saying. The point is, though, that change is going to happen, whether it's today, tomorrow, or very soon. Napier will not be around much longer, and then the question becomes, where do you go, and who do you want leading you? The one thing about the situation at Florida is a little screwy. Is the president just resigned at Florida, Ben Sass.
Yep.
So they have the acting president is the old president. A lot of people say, well, he won't want to do this. Well, what does he care? He'll do whatever he feels like doing. I mean, the former president is now the current president.
Correct.
He's not afraid of anyone. It's just a matter of, it's not even a matter. I mean, going in, what's so weird, Matt, and I know I'm spinning around here, but I've been there twice in a matter of 15 days. And
it's the epicenter of college football. Why wouldn't you be?
I've heard so much BS from Florida people and former Florida players about how much better this program was going to be, and it's worse. And this Saturday, what a showcase game! Florida at Mississippi State. Mississippi State lost to Toledo at home by what, 4 touchdowns?
A lot.
So I don't think. I mean, right now, I don't think Napier will be coaching Florida this weekend. Then it's a matter of, who do they get? Is it Lane? It's always Lane number one on the speculation list.
But why would Lane want to go there? Like, let's just peel that back for a second. There's a couple of things I want to respond with. First, as it relates to Mullen, I believe when the recruiting narrative got out, that he didn't want to talk about recruiting at a press conference. And he said that we'll talk about recruiting when it's time to talk about recruiting. When you say that, it's like a little burr on a fire, and it just kind of catches. And all of a sudden, like, you start losing. It's like, oh, it's because we can't recruit. Well, he can't really talk about the recruits during the season because you just not able to do it. My guess is, based on conversations, that then the big money people started saying, oh, I mean, look at Georgia, as you said. You got caught up in the Kirby Smart thing, and he was getting out recruited by Georgia. And it's like the big money guys are like, we got to have a guy that can come in and recruit. Got to have a guy that can come in and recruit. Well, okay, but what have I said here a million times on this show? If you're going to get rid of the guy you have, you had better make sure it's an upgrade to the current situation. Now, if I'm Lane Kiffin, I do not want to touch this thing. Well, why? Because Ole Miss has the resources, part one. Part two, you don't have the pressure that it takes at Florida to where you bail on a coach in year 4 who just went to 3 New Year's Six games. And oh, by the way, the guy that you thought was going to be at Florida for a decade rebuilding this thing, he's about to get clipped in year 3. And there's a 12-team playoff. What does he need to go to Florida for to go to the playoff? He doesn't. And so
there's also something else about Kiffin. Everybody thinks it's easy just to go hire a coach. Well, if Billy Napier is fired today or sometime soon, it will be before the end of the end of the last regular season game, around there. What do you wait till January to bring in Lane Kiffin, who's going to be in the playoffs? You can't do that. I mean, you won't have a program left, will you?
Let me throw something completely asinine at you, because it's the YouTube show. Why not? Let's break this down. Because you're right. If and when you get rid of Napier because you realized that probably wasn't the best hire. Why don't you call your old buddy Urban Meyer, who's doing TV, and say, hey, for this season, we need you to come in and act as an emeritus head coach to stabilize the program, get us through the season, lead the team. Nothing's expected after the final game of the year against Florida State. And thank you for your service. A la Bob Stoops, what he had to do at Oklahoma when Lincoln Riley bailed. Do you go to Herb and say, hey, man, need you for a few months? What do you think?
Well, I mean, we know there were a lot of bad feelings. I don't think those feelings are still there. It's been a long time. And one thing you can't deny about Urban Meyer is he came within a paperclip of winning 3 national championships in 4 years there. And that's all that matters. I mean,
Yeah.
I was with Steve Spurrier on Friday afternoon, and he was trying to defend Napier, although even Spurrier was running out of gas. And he said, well, if we could just have a winning record. And I said, Coach, you just got through saying that. I remember in 2001, you were undefeated. You lost to Tennessee at home. It was the 9/11 year, and the game was in the normal first the SEC championship game weekend. You lost by 3 points. You won a bowl. You won the Orange Bowl and finished number 3 in the country. And you quit because fans were unhappy about the season, and you went to the NFL. I mean, that's how things used to be. Urban didn't win in 09. It was like the world had come to an end when he had won in 06 and 08. I mean, Matt, I can't answer for Urban Meyer. Nobody can. Does he want to coach again? Sure. Do you want your last memory of a coach to being a complete disaster at the Jacksonville Jaguars? No.
Yeah, and this is because you hit on a couple of things. And this is where I find Paul and I kind of dig into the coaching situation better than anyone, because you have to think through it. But Urban Meyer's not going to be Florida's head coach. What Urban Meyer could be for Florida is an advisory head coach, because if you get rid of Napier now, which they probably will, Paul, the amount of poaching that is going to go on for Lagway and some of the good recruits that Napier, it is going to be, you need an alpha, you need a dog in there to get everybody in to coalesce and say, hey, this is YouTube. I don't know if you can say it or not, but everyone else that's out there, let's come together and make this thing work. And there's only, in my mind, there's only one guy that can do that, and it's Urban Meyer.
It's a novel theory. I mean, I think somehow he could pull himself away from hanging out with the crew on Saturday morning. I mean, I think he could. And others will suggest if you're going to go plucking off of Saturday morning television shows, and you know exactly where I'm going.
No chance.
What about Nick Saban?
No chance. I mean, look, you know what? We're kind of onto something now. There's probably good money. Here's another thing about college football that drives me absolutely nuts. There's a chance we talk about nothing on the field yesterday, because this is going in a really fun direction. There is nothing that drives me nuts more. Here's the conversation, Paul. Had to get rid of Jimmy John, our coach. Well, why'd you get rid of him in October? Because we had to get ahead on the coaching hiring cycle. Well, who the hell's available that's worth anything in October if you're getting ahead of the coaching cycle? So if I'm Saban or I'm Urban Meyer or one of these highly qualified coaches that's not in it right now, you know how much money you can make of being like a 3-month rental and just be like a coaching rental until you get the guy you want. We might have a business plan.
Yeah, and maybe co-coaches, Urban Meyer and Nick Saban, between them, 10 national championships?
Yeah, I mean, we might be on.
You could get Belichick, because he needs another job to be an analyst.
There you go. I mean, look, the coaches that are out that can come in and just kind of stabilize the program. But Florida's going to be one to watch. I hate this because, and I know you'll agree, I like Billy Napier. I got to know him when he was at Arizona State. He was a young up and coming coach, but even young up and coming coaches, you going from Louisiana to Florida, I mean, that is a big jump.
He he was good in a lot of areas. He was a good organizer, but when you make mistakes in staffing and hiring, you're going to fail. And he made multiple mistakes, and it was just too big for him. It, there's this, and by the way, that's the problem now with people. I mean, everywhere I went in Gainesville over the last 2 out of 3 weekends, I would say something about Napier, and they say, "Well, I really Billy's a good guy." I don't care what kind of guy he is. I mean, short of being a serial killer, I want you to be a good head coach. I mean, I just, but I mean, Matt, you've heard a lot of it because you're connected to that program directly and indirectly. But I mean, people were just convinced that he was going to make it, and he should have been fired at the end of last season. But that they just decided to go all in on him, and it was a disaster. And back to your original point about the AD. I mean, I just don't know. He's well respected, Scott Strickland. He is now, he's hired the last 2 coaches. Whether we think Mullen should have been fired or not, it doesn't change the narrative that's around him. And then, as you know, 2 weeks and a day ago, he sat next to me. Two weeks and 2 days ago, he sat next to me in Gainesville and said, "We believe in Billy. We think he's methodically building this program back, and we expect him to be here for a very long time." I mean, he doubled down. He wasn't just saying, everything in college football is transactional. I can't get. We'll see at the end of the season. He didn't say that.
Okay, but then you know what? Then okay, and you say that, then you either stick with him and say, we're gonna evaluate this after Florida State, or you put yourself on the line. You put your job on the line, and that's what Strickland's done. I know he's well respected. I know
that was the last interview Scott Strickland did.
So we'll watch the Billy Napier situation unfold. We could probably go back to the archives of the Matt Barrie Show presented by Allstate and look at Georgia from a year ago. They love playing with their food, don't they?
They do.
I mean, Kirby Smart's going to tell you, I can coach us up and win, but I don't think that Florida's as explosive as many people thought they were.
Well, yeah, I mean, 2 years ago it was Missouri on a Saturday night. They needed a last second play. Last year was Auburn. Remember, they were playing a terrible Auburn team, and Carson Beck led them back. And it's hard to explain. I mean, so much of it is, I think players nowadays, Matt, other than the real issue, which was Georgia, they buy into what they saw the previous week, and they looked at Kentucky and they were terrible and they weren't physical. Yeah. Kentucky was very physical on the line of scrimmage. Georgia has had some injury issues, and they just could not move. They couldn't get anything going. And to me, it takes a lot of resilience to win that game. The good news for Georgia is they have a week off. I mean, rarely, except in a double bye season, do you get a bye your 4th week, but they needed it badly.
Yeah.
To kind of sit back, and everyone in the country knows what's on the other side of that bye week. It's Alabama.
Yeah, and that's when you're going to really start learning about who everyone is. Again, Georgia. We were sitting there in the studio yesterday, and Mullen and Galloway, and we're watching the game. I'm like, man, is Kentucky going to do that? And Mullen literally cackled out loud. He goes, "Hey, there you go." He goes, "You're getting your hopes up. Anyone who gets their hopes up that Georgia's going to lose," he goes, "it is just not going to happen." And this is when Georgia was down. He's like, "It's not going to happen." And sure enough, Georgia, say this about them, they've won so many consecutive games, 41, 42 in a row, because in the regular season, because they know how to win games. Yesterday was no different. It was a little bit closer than people thought, but I'm with you, because this is a week that sets the table for the next week, because I think it's laughable that Tennessee's playing a team like Kent State. Everyone's doing it. I get it, but you're not going to learn much about them. Oklahoma gets by Tulane. Now we're going to know who Tennessee is next week, Nico Iamaleava. And I think, to me, the scariest team in the SEC no one's talking about in Tennessee. And then Oklahoma, still kind of an identity crisis with them. We don't know who or what they are, but strap them up, Oklahoma. It's SEC time. You're going to get a good one.
And we know about Tennessee's offense, but their defense looks like it may be what triggers them into a great season. And yeah, it's hard to believe in Oklahoma right now. I mean, they get the game day bus. By the way, hasn't been good luck. And I think South Carolina would have beaten LSU without game day. I am convinced that Beamer spent way too much time, grabbing shots with McAfee and Saban and Herbie, and not enough time working on the game plan, because the last couple of minutes of that game,
Oof.
Beamer was atrocious.
Yeah, like how about Brian Kelly, by the way, finding a way to get
Oh,
out. Now he had a couple calls like the pick sixes that got overturned. That
well,
went his way. But think about the conversation we're having this morning of if BK and LSU are 1-2.
we've had great conversations, but my producers were hitting me up yesterday at 17-0 going, man, that Monday conversation is really going to be fun, isn't it? And I mean, I don't know how they won that game.
I don't
Very
either.
similar to the Missouri game last year, if you remember, when they were in Columbia and they just pulled one out. But it's a good win for them. It's a great win for them because now they have UCLA, which is terrible, but it will sound good when they beat UCLA.
I can't wait this week, by the way, for the talk shows. And I'm gonna give you a hypothetical topic. I kind of think this is where it's gonna go from my experience. I would bet anything somewhere that the topic is gonna be, should Arch Manning supplant Quinn Ewers as Texas's starting quarterback? Now, the answer to that is emphatically no, but there isn't a program in the country that's got a better quarterback situation than Sark at Texas.
And that was really, to me, the most important story of Saturday is that Texas. I mean, I don't think they look any different now. I'm sure the old timers will say, not that I'm a new timer, but hey, that experience of Quinn Ewers, but Arch Manning looks like he's been around, and I think Texas is in great shape. I think you'll get prop bets now. Can he win the Heisman this year?
I think he moved to 18-1.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I remember Spencer Rattler, wasn't he the Heisman favorite going into the season, and he got replaced by Caleb Williams?
Also the number one pick favorite too. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, it's happened before, but I'm sure Sark will figure this out. It doesn't matter. Texas, doesn't have much on their dance card until we get to October, so they're in good shape.
Look, the lineage of the Manning family, we don't need to recap that here, but none of them won a Heisman Trophy, by the way. Like, of all the accolades of the Mannings, not one of them has a Heisman Trophy in their trophy case. I mean, Arch, because of the day and age of hype and social media and everything in between, and oh, by the way, accounting for 5 touchdowns yesterday, when it is his turn, I can't imagine what that Heisman hype is going to be like.
He's going to win, because I was just wondering if they get to the championship game and Arch is playing, will ESPN do a Manning cast?
Oh, well done. Yeah, I mean, you have to, and you got to have Cooper as dad on there. You
Yeah.
got to have the whole Art. You got to have the whole thing. Archie. You got to have the whole crew.
By the way, Archie, and I've been around long enough to remember him playing. He was. I mean, Peyton was clearly the best of the Mannings.
Yes.
But Archie as a college football player was iconic. I mean, there have been very few in his era that he should have won the Heisman, but he wasn't on a great team.
Yeah, look, it's going to be fun to watch the Art story. I think he's going to start next week at UL Monroe. I would not trot Quinn Ewers out for that, and we'll see where they are.
Then they have Mississippi State, so I mean, they really have a
Mississippi
State.
Week.
They might be the worst team in the country.
Yeah, it's not. I mean, for Jeff Lebby to finally get that opportunity, lose to Arizona State the week before, and then do that to Toledo, like, where do you even go from that?
By the way, I'm curious. I didn't have time to look at it, but on StubHub today, I wonder what 11 o'clock kick, Starkville, Saturday, Florida at Mississippi State. What do you think you can get a ticket for?
You know what? That's where I would have put the SEC Nation bus.
Well, it was a close call.
I'd have trotted all you high money salaried SEC employees out there and made you tell stories in Starkville.
Well, it would be one more opportunity for Tebow to double down on Billy Napier.
You know what though? If you like Mario Cristobal sitting there this morning on the beach, loving Florida State and Florida. Like, have you? And by the way, okay, so here's an example for you. And I brought up the Mullen thing earlier. That would be like Florida State firing Mike Norvell in 3 weeks after what he's done, 10-win season, 13-0. And it's starting to fall a little bit. That's because he hasn't really recruited one in high school. He hasn't. Just look at the rankings. I mean, that fall is absolutely shocking.
I had somebody ask me seriously. I mean, this isn't just some crazy person, do you think Norvell should be fired? And I mean, so listen, I fired some good coaches in my time, but let's lay off on Mike Norvell for right now. I don't care what happens this season. He's still a very good coach.
The only thing that I think he needs to answer for, I really do, and I've said this for weeks now, what did he see at a DJU that we hadn't seen at two other stops? What did he see?
He saw a guy that used to be the number one player in the country, but that was about 4 years ago.
I just like, that's the one thing I'm like, God, Mike, like you had this thing going like that.
Now, listen, Memphis is a good team, but still,
they are. But it's Memphis.
I mean, that was not as bad a loss as probably Georgia Tech.
And Boston College, they go into Columbia and they fight Missouri. But look, I'm about tired of these no week schedule games. I can't wait for football to get started. Let's just as we wrap up here, I want the people to understand that good games are coming. I'm going to quickly give you week 4. I think NC State Clemson has the opportunity to be really good. You've got USC Michigan in a classic Rose Bowl matchup. That'll be good. Utah, Oklahoma State, the Big 12 is going to start playing. And then the big one, Tennessee at Oklahoma. Like, there's going to be some substance in week 4.
Yeah, no, I mean, last week on paper was really dreadful. We got a lot of good games. We shouldn't have, but we did. And I was about to break my spell. We were about to get through the entire podcast without talking about one person, and I'm not going to talk about him. So we will maybe make history today.
Just to know that one person did get a win in a rivalry game, and he had his son/quarterback still out there late slinging it up big.
But it just shows that story has finally dimmed, that it's not that important anymore.
Let's just look real quick while we have you who that person has next week, because I don't have that person's schedule memorized. I mean, shame on me for not. Let's see. Let's go down to the Big 12 real quick while we have you. Big 12, there you are. Here they are. That person next week has Baylor and then UCF. So we'll see. Maybe that story from that coach will
a couple of wins and they'll be back in the playoff run, won't they?
For Paul Finebaum, I'm Matt Barrie. That is week 3 of the Matt Barrie Show, presented by Allstate.